Monsieur le Président, en l'espace de 5 mois, le prix de l'essence et du diesel a subi 4 augmentations successives, soit en décembre de l'année dernière, en février, avril et mai de cette année. Le litre du diesel qui se vendait à 37,30 roupies se vend aujourd'hui à 54,55 roupies, soit une augmentation de plus de 31%. Quant au litre de l'essence qui se vendait à 50,70 roupies l'année dernière, il est passé à 74,10 roupies, soit une augmentation de plus de 46%. En avril de cette année, le prix de la bonbonne de gaz ménager de 12 kg est passé de 180 roupies à 240 roupies, soit une augmentation de 33,3%. Et en avril dernier, en réponse à une question parlementaire, le ministre de la Santé nous informait que les prix des 15 médicaments les plus utilisés à Maurice a connu une hausse annuelle entre 25 à 30% depuis 2017. 25 à 30% chaque année. Les prix du lait, des fruits et légumes et autres produits alimentaires ont flambé. Certes, il y a eu une hausse considérable dans le prix du fret et sur le marché mondial avec la pandémie du Covid et de la guerre en Ukraine. Mais, Monsieur le Président, les prix avaient déjà pris l'ascenseur, même avant Covid, même avant la guerre en Ukraine, à cause de la dépréciation de notre roupie. Le dollar américain, qui se vendait à 31 roupies en décembre 2014, se vend aujourd'hui à 44 roupies, soit une dépréciation de 42%. Vous avez bien entendu, sous le régime de ce gouvernement, notre roupie a perdu presque la moitié de sa valeur. Et comme on paye nos importations en devises, forcément, une dépréciation de la roupie augmente considérablement le prix des produits importés. C'est dire que depuis plusieurs mois déjà, Monsieur le Président, la population souffre de la cherté de la vie. Face à l'inaction du gouvernement, certains de nos concitoyens sont descendus dans la rue et ont manifesté leur mécontentement. La société civile, les syndicalistes, les économistes, les politiques, tous sont montés au créneau pour solliciter l'intervention du gouvernement. Au Parlement, le leader de l'opposition et d'autres membres de l'opposition ont fait plusieurs propositions, d'une part pour baisser le coût de la vie et d'autre part pour augmenter le pouvoir d'achat, surtout pour ceux au bas de l'échelle, les retraités, handicapés, veuves et orphelins. L'attente était grande. Le ministre des Finances a cédé sous la pression populaire et a annoncé dans ce budget plusieurs mesures pour augmenter le pouvoir d'achat d'une frange importante de la population. Mais ce n'est pas suffisant. Il aurait pu faire plus. Il aurait dû faire plus. Que représentent 1 000 roupies pour les retraités, handicapés, veuves et orphelins qui n'ont pas eu d'augmentation dans leur pension depuis 2 ans et demi, alors que vous aviez promis dans votre manifeste électoral d'augmenter leur pension à 13 500 roupies. Les retraités de plus de 65 ans percevront une allocation additionnelle de 1 000 roupies sous la CSG Retirement Benefit. Cette mesure touche 169 000 retraités et coûtera environ 2,2 milliards de roupies. Quant à ceux dont le revenu brut ne dépasse pas 50 000 roupies, ils bénéficieront d'une allocation mensuelle de 1 000 roupies comme CSG Income Allowance. Cette mesure touche 350 000 personnes et coûtera 4,2 milliards de roupies. Donc 2,2 milliards de roupies aux retraités de plus de 65 ans et 4,2 milliards de roupies pour les salariés qui touchent moins de 50 000 roupies. Ça nous fait un total de 6,4 milliards de roupies qui sera puisé des contributions sociales généralisées. Mais j'insiste, le ministre des Finances aurait pu faire plus, il aurait dû faire plus, et je m'excuse. Et je m'explique. À la page 484 des estimates, nous avons un tableau récapitulatif des contributions qui ont été prélevés pour la contribution sociale généralisée. Donc, on y voit, par exemple, à la page 484, donc, que... Donnez-moi une seconde. Voilà. On voit bien que pour l'année financière 2020-2021, l'État a récolté environ 5,3 milliards de roupies. Il a dépensé 0 sous. Pour 2021-2022, il a récolté 8,6 milliards de roupies. Là aussi, il a dépensé 0 sous. Et pour l'année prochaine, l'année financière 2022-2023, il compte recevoir 10,1 milliards. Donc, si on prend les 5,3 milliards de 2020, on ajoute les 8,6 milliards de 2021 et maintenant les 10,1 milliards qu'il va obtenir cette année, le montant cumulé des contributions sociales généralisées depuis son introduction est aujourd'hui à 24 milliards de roupies. Donc le gouvernement a déjà récolté 13,9 milliards de roupies. Il va récolter encore 10 milliards de roupies, donc au total 24 milliards de roupies sous l'item contribution sociale généralisée. C'est de l'argent qui a été payé par les contribuables, les employés du secteur privé et des self-employed. Et de ces 24 milliards de roupies, combien est-ce que les mesures budgétaires vont coûter au ministre des Finances? 6,4 milliards de roupies. Donc il avait 24 milliards de roupies, il ne dépense que 6,4 milliards de roupies. C'est pourquoi l'opposition ainsi maintient que le ministre des Finances avait une marge de manœuvre suffisante pour augmenter encore plus le paiement, le transfert qu'il a fait à ceux qui ont un revenu brut ne dépensant pas 50 000 roupies. Ce n'est pas tout, Monsieur le Président. Si nous allons à la page 503 des Estimates, sous l'item de Special Funds, ces fameux Special Funds, on voit que la balance au 30 juin 2022, à la page 503, la balance, on a plusieurs fonds, on a le National Resilience Fund, National Environment and Climate Change Fund, l'Auto Fund, COVID-19 Project Development Fund, COVID-19 Solidarity Fund, COVID-19 Vaccination Program Fund. Quand on ajoute tous les montants, on a 36,2 milliards de roupies. 36,2 milliards de roupies, c'est le montant accumulé dans les Special Funds qui n'ont pas encore été dépensés par ce gouvernement. C'est la balance aujourd'hui qu'a le ministre des Finances. Et après tous les paiements qu'il projette de faire pour cette année financière, il va se retrouver toujours avec un montant de 6,9 milliards de roupies. Donc il avait au moins 6,9 milliards de roupies en plus qu'il n'a pas besoin pour cette année financière pour faire ses dépenses qu'il a budgétées. Donc le ministre des Finances avait selon nous une marge de manœuvre confortable, il aurait pu faire mieux. Il aurait pu, par exemple, puiser de ce fonds pour augmenter le pouvoir d'achat, pour augmenter les pensions, pour faire des transferts directs aux plus démunis. Il aurait aussi pu utiliser cet argent pour donner une allocation de chômage, surtout aux jeunes et aux femmes qui, selon Statistiques Mauritius, éprouvent des difficultés à l'embauche. J'espère surtout qu'il ne partage pas l'avis de mon bon ami Bobby Hariram, qui n'est malheureusement pas là, qui avait critiqué la proposition du MMM figurant dans notre manifeste électoral de donner une allocation mensuelle de 5 000 roupies aux chômeurs. Sur un plateau télévisé, il avait argué que si le MMM donnait 5 000 roupies aux jeunes, ces jeunes allaient utiliser cet argent, je cite, pour Biomass. Donc, toujours est-il que les chômeurs demeurent, Monsieur le Président, les grands absents de ce budget. Pas de transfert pour eux, et on s'étonne que nos jeunes souffrent d'une dépression, nos jeunes veulent émigrer. Le ministre des Finances aurait pu aussi utiliser les réserves accumulées dans les Special Funds pour réduire le prix des carburants. Sur chaque litre d'essence, figurez-vous, sur chaque litre d'essence, 30 roupies va dans les caisses du gouvernement en forme de taxes et de prélèvements. Mais peut-être que le ministre des Finances ne réalise pas ce que représente une augmentation de 46% sur le prix de l'essence et du diesel pour le petit peuple, pour les chauffeurs de taxi, pour les conducteurs de vannes, pour les pêcheurs, pour les plaisanciers qui utilisent le carburant comme matière première pour gagner leur vie. Peut-être ils ne réalisent pas parce que je crois comprendre que c'est nous, les contribuables, qui payons pour ces déplacements en voiture de fonction. Donc il n'a pas à payer de l'essence, lui. Donc peut-être pour lui, ce n'est pas un gros problème, une augmentation de 46% dans le prix de l'essence. Quant au prix du médicament, je me réjouis que le ministre des Finances ait accepté la proposition du leader de l'opposition pour réduire la marge des produits pharmaceutiques par un régime de majoration régressive. Mais nous avions aussi demandé, Monsieur le Président, de permettre l'importation parallèle des produits pharmaceutiques de marque. Le leader de l'opposition avait même adressé un PNQ en ce sens le 19 avril de cette année. Le ministre du Commerce avait alors annoncé qu'il allait parler avec son collègue ministre des Affaires étrangères. Et rappelons que ce changement de régime était aussi une des recommandations de la Competition Commission. Or, dans le présent budget, pas un mot à ce sujet, pas un mot sur le changement de régime pour permettre l'importation parallèle des produits. Le ministre des Finances aurait-il cédé au lobby de ces grands messieurs de l'industrie pharmaceutique, with the people or with the big boys of the industry? Monsieur le Président, je me suis attardé sur ce sujet car certains se sont posé la question de savoir comment le ministre a pu financer ses dépenses alors qu'il crie à tue-tête qu'il n'avait pas de marge de manœuvre avec la guerre en Ukraine. Je pense que c'est clair pour tout le monde qu'il avait la marge nécessaire. Mais malheureusement, le répit risque d'être de courte durée. Les 1000 roupies risquent de s'exavérer très rapidement si rien n'est fait pour contenir le taux d'inflation et la dépréciation de la roupie. Il n'y a aucune mesure, Monsieur le Président, dans ce budget pour contenir l'inflation et la dépréciation de la roupie d'une manière significative. Aucune annonce aussi sur le prix d'électricité. Se dirige-t-on vers une augmentation tarifaire? Selon les estimates à la page 487, pour l'année 2021-2022, l'année qui vient de s'écouler, le gouvernement a déjà puisé 3,5 milliards de roupies, 3,5 milliards de roupies du Central Electricity Board. Donc le CEB avait les réserves nécessaires pour absorber une augmentation du coût de l'huile lourde et du charbon sur le cours mondial. Mais le gouvernement, l'année dernière, a pris 3,5 milliards de roupies du Central Electricity Board. J'espère que le ministre des Utilités publiques nous donnera la garantie qu'il n'y aura pas de majoration dans le prix de l'électricité. Quant à l'inflation, le ministre des Finances n'a même pas eu le courage de prédire le taux de l'inflation, préférant se référer au chiffre de 8,6% avancé par la Banque de Maurice. Or, ce chiffre, 8,6%, est contredit par Statistiques Mauritius. Dans son rapport publié le 7 juin, le jour même du budget, Statistiques Mauritius annonçait que le taux d'inflation, year on year, au mois de mai 2022, était de 10,7%. 10,7%. La tendance est certainement à la hausse et certains économistes prévoient que le taux d'inflation atteindra les 15% d'ici la fin de l'année. Mais je comprends le ministre des Finances. Les prévisions budgétaires ne sont visiblement pas son fort. Et les chiffres qu'il avance fait généralement les chiffres qu'il avance font généralement sourciller même les plus optimistes. On se souvient en outre que l'année dernière, il avait prévu un taux de croissance de 9%, avec une arrivée touristique de 650 000 personnes. On a à peine eu la moitié du nombre de touristes qu'il avait prévu. Et le taux de croissance ne sera que de 6,9%, bien loin des 9% qu'il avait prévu l'année dernière. En vérité, Monsieur le Président, le taux de croissance est bien en deçà de 6,9%. La dépréciation de la roupie ayant dopé les revenus du secteur financier, ICT et nos exportations. Donc, quand on convertit les recettes que ces secteurs ICT, offshore et manufacturiers ont obtenus en devises, dollars ou euros, c'est ça qui permet d'augmenter la croissance, d'augmenter le PIB. Et malheureusement, le ministre des Finances n'a toujours pas retenu sa leçon. Et cette année, il prévoit un taux de croissance de 8,5% en misant sur l'arrivée de 1,4 million de touristes. Parce que là, il n'y a pas de problème de la guerre en Ukraine, il n'y a pas de problème d'augmentation du coût de transport, il n'y a pas de problème pour la liaison aérienne. Il est optimiste, il va avoir 1,4 million de touristes. Et c'est clair qu'il n'a aucune intention de défendre la roupie, parce que toute appréciation de la roupie, ironiquement, se traduirait à un taux de croissance moindre et par ricochet à moins de revenus pour l'État. Donc si la roupie s'apprécie, il y a moins de revenus pour l'État, il y a moins de croissance pour ce gouvernement. Par contre, Monsieur le Président, ce qui est bien réel, c'est que ce gouvernement ne cesse de nous endetter. Contrairement à l'impression qu'il a donnée, on aurait pu croire que le gouvernement est en train de réduire notre dette publique. En réalité, la dette publique augmentera davantage en 2022-2023. Selon les estimates, la dette publique qui est de 465 milliards de roupies passera à 449 milliards de roupies l'année prochaine. Pour rappel, et c'est bon que les membres de l'Assemblée nationale et le public en général se rappellent qu'en décembre 2014, quand ce gouvernement accède au pouvoir, la dette publique était de 237,7 milliards de roupies. Aujourd'hui, notre dette publique est à 435 milliards, soit presque 200 milliards de roupies en plus. Une augmentation de 83,5%. 83,5% d'augmentation dans notre dette. Mais cette dette, elle a un prix. Tous les ans, nous dépensions des milliards de roupies pour payer les intérêts et rembourser le capital. 435 milliards, si on divise cela par une population d'1,2 million de personnes, ça nous donne en moyenne 362 500 roupies par personne. C'est-à-dire chaque Mauricien est endetté aujourd'hui à hauteur de 362 000 roupies 500. Chaque enfant qui naît dans notre joli pays naît avec une dette de 362 000 roupies sur sa tête. Et quand vous réalisez cela, Monsieur le ministre, que valent vos 1000 roupies de baby bonus que vous allez donner aux parents? Vous endettez ce bébé à hauteur de 362 000 roupies et vous leur donnez un baby bonus de 1000 roupies et vous pensez qu'il doit vous dire merci et taper la table? Et le montant de notre dette publique risque d'être encore plus conséquent si vous n'arrivez pas à vendre les biens de l'État pour les 22 milliards roupies comme prévu dans vos estimates. Au fait, la dette publique aujourd'hui aurait pu être encore plus conséquente si la MIC, la Banque de Maurice finalement, n'est pas venu à la rescousse du gouvernement une nouvelle fois en achetant les actions d'Air Mauritius pour 13 milliards de roupies. Mais ce n'est pas la première fois qu'on entend que l'État va vendre ses biens. Lorsque l'honorable Premier ministre était ministre des Finances en 2019, il avait déjà dit dans son budget, et je cite, « We will also dispose of certain non-strategic assets to reduce the level of government debt ». Depuis 2019, ce gouvernement essaye de vendre la Mobank, essaye de vendre la NIC. Ils n'y arrivent pas, parce que ces biens ne valent pas 22 milliards. Donc je suis d'accord avec le leader de l'opposition, probablement, une nouvelle fois, c'est la banque de Boris, à travers la MIC, qui va venir à la rescousse de ce gouvernement en payant 22 milliards pour des actifs qui n'en veulent pas. Mr. Speaker, sir, every year it is the same routine with this government. They announce a series of measures and never implement them. Then, the next year, or the following year, they come back with the same measure, the same broken record, the same disc rayé. You will recall, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, sir, that last year, the Honourable Minister of Finance took so much time of the House to read out an extensive list of construction and upgrading projects in high flood-prone areas for each of the 20 constituencies. It was more like a geographic class for us. Well, this year, he has done it again. And at paragraph 226, he read out again the list of areas where drains will be constructed in each of the 20 constituencies. And to make it very credible, the amount which has been earmarked for each constituency this year is lower than the amount which was earmarked in last year's budget, so that the public, when they hear him speak, they say, oh, he's done a good job. From last year to this year, he has spent a lot of money on drains, so now he has less money to spend on drains because the construction work has been done. It has to show to the public that government means business, right? Working for the people, right? Now, these work were to be financed out of the COVID-19 Project Development Fund. When we turn to page 509 of the estimate, we note under the item National Flood Management Program, estimate 2021-2022, 3.6 billion rupees. This was the amount which was supposed to have been spent during this year. This was what was budgeted. This is what we voted. But under revised estimate, which gives you an indication, it's still not final, but an indication of how much has been spent so far, we found that the amount has been revised from 3.6 billion to only 800 million. Out of 3.6 billion rupees, you spent only 800 million, only 22.2%. You have spent only a fifth of what you had targeted, of what you had budgeted. And that is what you call working for the people, with the people. We vote the money. You increase public debt because you finance the deficit through borrowing. So you borrow money, and then you don't spend. And it is not a joke. We're talking about flood-prone areas, areas where people are at risk. And this year, Mr. Speaker, sir, after the heavy rainfall and cyclone, again, houses in my constituency were flooded. Many lost their food, furniture, clothing, and personal effects. They had to take refuge in refugee centers. Some of them did not even get the rain allowance because the police simply refused to visit their home and confirm the damage. Most of these people, Mr. Speaker, sir, are very poor people, and they live in precarious houses fitted with iron sheet. They are not living there by choice. They are there because they don't have any house. They've been on the waiting list for social housing, for NSDC houses for years. And since last election, this government every year has been telling us the same thing. They are going to build 12,000 houses. 2.5 years later, not a single brick has been laid. We're talking about Mauritius. Mauritius is a small island. Do you really want people to believe that it takes 2.5 years to identify construction sites. You have not been able to build a single house out of the 12,000 houses, and now you want us to believe that you will complete construction across 50 sites by 2024? Even if you want to, where will you have the manpower to do so? Where you have the construction companies to do so, to run 50 sites, 12,000 housing units? Well, we'll see next year. Probably you'll come back and you'll tell us, again, you will do 12,000 houses in a year's time. But Mr. Speaker, sir, if there is one example of a project which has been in every single budget since 2014, it must be the construction of Rivière des Anguilles Dam, which happens to be in the constituency of the Minister of Finance. Government has been talking about this project for so long that really today no one takes you seriously anymore. Last year, the Minister of Finance announced that 9.4 billion rupees will be invested in the construction of Rivière des Anguilles Dam and its water treatment plant. I hope in your summing up, the Honourable Minister will tell us how much money has been spent on that project to date. What stage have we reached? When will the construction be completed? When will the treatment plant be operational? Because the problem with deferring projects is that it inevitably results in increased costs. With inflation, with the depreciation of rupees, all the imported materials. And it is us, the population, who will have to pay for your lack of seriousness for not having completed the dam when you were supposed to. Another recurring theme, and I'm glad that the Honourable Minister for Agriculture is here, another recurring theme is food security. Every year, a series of measures are announced to encourage local production of onion, potatoes, and other vegetables. Every year, there are measures to encourage animal breeding and livestock production. Every year, we are promised the setting up of agro-processing facilities. Last year, the government even went as far as announcing that 1,000 arpents of land would be made available by Landscope to private growers. What happened to those land? How much of these 1,000 arpents is now under cultivation? What crop is being planted on this land? Mr. Speaker, sir, we all agree that we should produce more of what we eat and eat more of what we produce. This slogan has been there since the 70s. But it serves no purpose coming up with a slogan creux if you don't have a clearly defined policy and stick to it. The reality of the situation is that there are today fewer and fewer planters. There are today fewer and fewer land under cultivation. And I'm sorry to say, but the government has its shares of responsibility. There was a time where it was very difficult to convert agricultural land to industrial or residential use. But since you have come in power in December 2014, what have you done? First, you came up with smart cities, conversion of prime agricultural land, hectares of prime fertile land converted into buildings and concrete. Then you provided incentives for agricultural land owners to convert their agricultural land into golf courses. Hectares of prime agricultural land transformed into grass for leisure activities. Then through the Economic Development Board, you allowed landowners to undertake real estate projects and sell them to foreigners. And now the Minister of Finance has announced at paragraph 172 of his speech that holders of residence permit will be given the opportunity to acquire a residential property of a minimum of $350,000, which is roughly 15.4 million rupees. Tell me, and I don't know if any of you is a landowner or have family who are landowner, but if you are a landowner and you are given the chance to sell residential property to foreigners, what will you do? Plant onion and get 33 rupees per kilo? Plant potato and get 38 rupees per kilo? plant cane and get 25 rupees per kilo of sugar? Or will you develop the land, sell it to foreigners, and make millions? But before coming to the scheme, I hope that this government has evaluated the impact of which such a measure will have on the agricultural sector. Now, the Minister of Finance did not say anything as to where will these houses be located. Will there be any restriction, or would holders of residential permit be able to acquire a house anywhere in Mauritius, as long as they are paying the solidarity tax and they're paying at least $350,000? But more shockingly, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister who will chair a committee to examine each application on a monthly basis. No, come on, seriously. The Prime Minister will look at each application, doesn't have anything better to do than sit and look at the application to buy a flat of 15,000 rupees. Mr. Speaker, sir, allowing foreigners to buy residential property worth 15 million rupees would inevitably create a price hike in real estate market. Already it is extremely difficult for a new couple to acquire property. With this measure, it will simply be impossible for them to do so. So I'm urging the government to reconsider this decision. This is surely not for the benefit of Mauritians looking to acquire a home. But maybe the government is turning to this measure out of despair. Out of despair because they cannot attract foreign direct investment, except in real estate. But then they should ask themselves, why are foreign investors not investing in Mauritius? Government brags about making progress in ease of business, but is unable to attract investors. Yet, every year, we hear the same rhetoric from the Honourable Minister of Finance, who say that there are billions of rupees of investment in the pipeline being dealt at the level of EDB, and there is a committee, high-powered committee chaired by the Honourable Prime Minister, who is going to facilitate this investment. Where are these investments? Tell us the billions of rupees of investment which you said in each of your budget that are before EDB. And even last week, you said there's 200 million, not 2 million, 200 million rupee worth of project. 200 billion, not million, billion. What that? 8 Metro Express? 8 Metro Express, what is sitting with the EDB. Tell us about it. We want to know. We want to know who we are investing, where are they investing. But you choose not to mention any project before because so far none of the major projects that you've been announcing for the past 3 years have materialized. So this year, we did not hear anything about the biotechnology and pharmaceutical industry. Nothing about the investors who were supposed to set up factories to manufacture pharmaceutical products. Nothing also about the manufacturing plant for local production of COVID-19 vaccine. Do you remember? There's supposed to be production of COVID-19 vaccine and other pharmaceutical products. And the government was supposed to provide seed capital of 1 billion rupees. What happened? All bluff? All talk, but no project? But it is a matter of concern, Mr. Speaker, sir. Yesterday, I was reading how Rwanda has been attracting investors. And now in Rwanda, they produce mobile phones from start to finish. So why can Rwanda do it and we can't? Not us. Do we lack the necessary skill and manpower? Is our labor force too expensive? Do we have too many social charges? Is the income tax regime deterring expats from moving to Mauritius? Are we not sufficiently well connected? Being part of Africa and member of regional organizations, we should have positioned ourselves as the gateway to Africa. But other than a fleeting reference to the government chartering a regional feeder vessel to service Eastern African country, there's absolutely nothing in this budget. Nothing in this budget about our African strategy. Not a word. Does this government believe in Africa? Yet Africa is a land of promises. Africa has an expansive population, a young, dynamic population which is increasingly educated. And there is an emerging an emerging middle class in many African countries. What are we doing to tap those new markets, those new business opportunities? Do we at least have a strategy to attract tourists from African countries other than South Africa? I keep repeating myself every year, Mr. Speaker, sir, during budget time, and I keep making a plea to the government to adopt an African strategy, but it always falls on deaf ear. Désespérant. Forget about African strategy. The truth is that there is no strategy in this budget to bolster existing sectors and nothing about developing new sectors of the economy. Nothing. And in a way, the Minister of Finance makes his mea culpa at paragraph 43 of his speech when he states, and I quote, "To this end, Maurice Strategy, an economic research and planning bureau to formulate socio-economic policy, will be set up." So now he's going to set up Maurice Strategy to provide planning, to formulate socio-economic policies. Excuse me, but aren't you supposed to be the Minister of Economic Planning and Development? That is what it says on your title. What does economic planning and development mean if it's not to formulate socio-economic policies? You're already in charge of a ministry which is supposed to plan, to think ahead. What have you been doing? And if you look at the Economic Development Board Act, the very first object of EDB is, and I quote, "to provide strong institutional support for strategic economic planning and ensure greater coherence and effectiveness in economic policy formulation." EDB is already supposed to be doing what you now want Maurice Strategy to be doing. So why another structure? Why another structure to put your political nominees and to incur more expenditure, to waste more funds? Moving to the measures, or rather lack of measures for the financial services sector, we recently came out of the FATF grey list, out of the blacklist and the European Union list, the blacklist of the European Union and out of the UK list. The Minister of Finance himself acknowledged that, and I quote, "we need to build on this momentum. We need to advertise ourselves as a well-regulated jurisdiction. We need to get rid of this negative image that some international media portrays us, especially after the publication of the Paradise Papers. The industry was waiting for government to announce the setting up of a promotion agency with adequate staff and financial resources to undertake marketing initiatives, just like the tourism sector has its MTPA. There used to be a financial services promotion agency, but this government scrapped the agency and transferred its role to EDB. But it's not working. It's not working, and I know the Minister of Financial Services is aware of the call from the industry for a dedicated promotion agency. Yet, nothing in this budget about marketing strategy, about how to promote the financial sector. But instead, there is one measure that has been announced at paragraph 137, which is causing a lot of distress. And I read it: to continue the overhauling of the financial services sector, the government will adapt its legislative framework to converge the domestic and global business regime. Now, this is very worrisome. If this is limited to the tax regime, I can understand. If you want to converge, to eliminate ring fencing, have unicity one regime for global business and domestic companies, as far as taxation is concerned, I don't have a problem with that. But if you're going to change the global business regime, the legislative framework, then we have a problem, because since inception, the global business sector has its own set of legislation. It is exempt from several provisions of the Financial Services Act. It is exempt from several provisions of the Companies Act. Its books and records are confidential, not easily accessible to anyone. So, if ever you're going to change this and make a global business company at par with a domestic company, then at least consult the people from the industry, because as of today, they are very worried about this measure. Mr. Speaker, sir, very quickly, nothing to boost the ICT sector. I don't know what the Honourable Minister will talk about. Probably, again, he will talk about the Digital Industries Academy, which used to be called ICT Academy, which is there, again, every year in the budget, and which is still not operational. Every time we hear that they are coming up with training. Luckily for us, operators in the ICT sector provide their own training. But nothing on how to increase connectivity, speed, lower charges, promote services. And now we are told that there will be a 5-year blueprint will be devised. So hopefully we'll have to wait for that blueprint to know the way forward. Mr. Speaker, sir, the budget speech has a whole chapter on cleaner, greener, renewable energy. The government has undertaken to produce 60% energy from renewable sources by 2030. According to the Minister of Finance, government will produce an additional 200 megawatts from renewable sources by 2025, in 3 years' time, to increase the share of energy from renewable mix to 40%. We are, of course, on this side of the House, very much in favor of moving to renewable energy. But this is a very ambitious timeline. Very ambitious because on the same day the budget was presented, Statistic Mauritius published its statistic on energy and water for year 2021. Around 78.5% of electricity was generated from non-renewable sources, mainly coal and fuel oil, while the remaining 21.5% came from renewable sources. In 2020, the share of renewable energy was 23.9% of the energy, total energy. 2021, the share has been reduced to 21.5%. Reduction. You're given commitment that you're going to increase your share of renewable energy, and instead of increasing it, you're reducing it. In fact, electricity generated from renewable sources, according to Statistics Mauritius, decreased by 7% last year. And this is why I say that the figures advanced by the Honourable Minister of Finance are very optimistic. The Honourable Minister of Finance is expecting 20 billion worth of private investment over the next 3 years. On the other hand, the Roadmap 2030 for electricity sector, which was published last month, provides that to meet renewable energy target of 60% by 2030, an estimated 1.3 billion USD is required to be invested. This works out to around 59 billion rupees. 59 billion rupees, that's a massive investment. The question is, will investors from the private sector be interested to make such massive investment if CEB will purchase electricity from them at the feed-in tariff announced by the Honourable Minister of Finance at 4.20 rupee per kilowatt hour? As far as the decision to make of all hybrid and electricity vehicles is concerned, to remove duties from all this, the Honourable Leader of Opposition has dealt with it. It's not going to make a big impact because most electric cars were already on no duty, and they were still expensive. But there is serious question marks about battery used by these vehicles, which has to be replaced after a while. And more importantly, what will happen to the battery when they are disposed of? I'm sure the Honourable Minister of Finance must have consulted the Minister of Environment and told us how he's going to dispose toxic waste represented by these batteries. In any event, it serves absolutely no purpose encouraging the use of electric vehicles if they will be powered by energy generated from non-renewable sources, as is currently the case. By the way, what happened to National Biomass Framework, which was announced in last year's budget? Not a word in this budget. Is the government still interested in generating electricity using biomass? There is no incentive in this budget given to planters to grow high fiber plants. There is also nothing about converting waste to energy. And of course, the use of ethanol as a substitute to petrol is completely off the radar. Yet this government wants us to believe that it will increase the share of renewable energy in the energy mix to 40% by 2020 and 60% by 2023. Mr. Speaker, sir, at a time when this budget makes provision for 10.9 billion rupees to the public force, the whole nation is still under a state of shock. Cardinal Piat used the term horrified. Others were disgusted and traumatized. But no word can probably adequately describe the feeling one gets when one sees the graphic images of certain police officers torturing suspects in police custody. Police officers who were supposed to uphold the law and were caught red-handed breaking the law. And they did it not only once, but several times. Dozens of electric torches have now been secured in police stations, of course, all illegal weapons. Yet not a word in this budget condemning this police brutality. You had words for police officers who seize drugs, and they should be congratulated. But you should also condemn police who takes the law in their hands and torture people. You should not hide the fact. Of course, we agree that there are good law-abiding police officers who are doing a remarkable work. We praise them for that. But this should not hide the fact that certain police officers have been torturing subjects. And they've been doing it for years, and they got away with it. Suspects have even died in public custody. There has been several PQs on police brutality over the years. Has any police officer ever been convicted and sentenced for torture or manslaughter? Yet we know, in this case, that the police had a copy of the pen drive containing the clip of torture since 2020. What did they do? Cover up? Police brutality and torture is a fact. What will the government do about it? Business as usual? This is what we want to know. There is an independent police complaint commission. How effective is it? Does the law have to be changed? Does it need to have more powers? Is it properly staffed to conduct inquiries? Does it get all the cooperation it needs when it carries the inquiries? Before the Independent Police Complaint Commission, we had the Police Complaints Division of the National Human Rights Commission. At that time also, there were reported cases of police brutality and torture. They also inquired in cases of suspects dying in police custody. Yet, there has never been any conviction secured against any police officer. Why? The harsh reality, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that certain police officers are using torture and beating up subjects and are getting away with it. We should change the system. This is why l'Entente de l'Espoir and the leader of the opposition has called upon the Prime Minister to set up a commission of inquiry, not only to hear evidence and ascertain the extent of torture of people in police custody, but more importantly, to make recommendations to improve the system and make sure that the constitutional rights of individuals are observed. Because of the seriousness of the situation, we have asked that the Commission of Inquiry be chaired by a former Chief Justice. It is also urgent, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the Police and Criminal Justice Bill to be debated in Parliament as soon as possible. In the newsletter of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, published last month, the DPP makes a very compelling case for the adoption of the Police and Criminal Justice Bill. He informs us that his office has had extensive discussion with Judge Jeffrey Rivelin, consultant on the bill on assignment from the Commonwealth Secretariat. A first version of the bill, honourable members will recall, which was known as Police and Criminal Evidence Bill, was introduced and read a first time in this House as far back as 2013. The bill will bring at least two major changes. First, it will abolish provisional charges. Second, it will provide for the appointment of a custody officer responsible for the safety and proper treatment of the suspect throughout custody. Questioning will be video recorded. There is also a proposal for confessions to be recorded in the presence of a magistrate. With this bill, the whole policing culture will change, and police will no longer be able to rely on forced confession to secure conviction. The position on this side of the House is all in favor of the introduction of this bill. And frankly, I was expecting the Honourable Minister of Finance last week to mention it in his budget speech. I was expecting him to enumerate measures that will be taken to reduce the risk of torture and death of a person while in police custody. In other countries, police officers are required to wear body camera and film every encounter they have with a potential criminal. I know this is only wishful thinking, because the reality is that in Mauritius, even cameras installed in police stations suddenly do not work at the time of death of the person in police custody. But the question we have to ask ourselves is whether there is a real will on the other side of the House to change things. I have reason to ask the question when I recall what the Honourable Attorney General stated in this very August Assembly on the 25th of May 2022, a few days ago in fact, in answer to a PQ from Honourable Lobin, who wanted to know the expected date of introduction of the Police and Criminal Justice Bill. The Honourable Attorney General explained that as a consequence of COVID-19 pandemic, the legislative calendar of government had been seriously disrupted, and stated, and I quote, "There are now competing priorities where other legislation have to come first." Other priorities. Yet the same Attorney General had in July 2019, in answer to a similar PQ, stated that government was envisaging the introduction of the said bill in the House during that session, meaning in 2019, almost 3 years ago. Being given that extensive consultation has already been held, being given that the bill is ready, I make an appeal to the Attorney General to bring the bill before Parliament as a matter of priority, because nothing has higher priority than a bill to ensure that the fundamental human rights of every citizen of this country is protected. Thank you.
Honourable Gobin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think it is important to once again recall the context in which Budget 2022-2023 is being presented before this House. The context, once again, therefore, being the COVID pandemic, successive lockdowns, and the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, these two countries being major producers of basic commodities. And it is in this context that food security has taken center stage. Honourable Uteem asked earlier what has been the production of food crops. He has mentioned that time and again we announce schemes for the farming community. I would be pleased to inform the House that the agricultural sector, the statistics for 2021 show that the agricultural sector grew by 9.5% in 2021. And food crop production, and that would be open field only. Food crop production in open field only increased by 6.8% from 2020 to 2021. And in terms of tonnage, so food crop production in 2020 was 95,029 tons. reaching in year 2021 101,537. That is encouraging. And this is the background. And in the context of the geopolitical situation, food security, as I said earlier, has taken center stage. Now, how do we articulate our food security policy? And it will be impossible for me in 30 minutes or 45 minutes to go into each and every sector, but I will highlight, I think, the main ones. Il faut commencer par le commencement, and that is with seeds and fertilizers. And once again, government has put grants and subsidies to help farmers for seeds and fertilizers. And especially in the context of a surge in the prices of fertilizers. It is important to recall that, in fact, these two countries, once again, Russia and Ukraine, are major producers of phosphates, out of which we make fertilizers, which we use extensively, particularly in our sugarcane fields. So therefore, government will help transition to locally produced and sustainable inputs. And 75 million rupees will be provided to cover, for registered planters to cover 50% of their cost of fertilizers. Furthermore, a subsidy of 75% will be provided on the purchase of liquid fertilizers, biofertilizers, and composts produced by cooperatives. Planters and cooperatives will be eligible to a subsidy of 50% up to a maximum of 500,000 rupees for the purchase of equipment for composting. I have to inform the House that as of to date, 1,414 planters have obtained such subsidies. The second point I want to highlight on the food security policy, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that we have to encourage new techniques of agriculture. And it's the strategic objective is to adopt climate-resilient agriculture, that is, in simple terms, sheltered farming and hydroponics. This budget provides a booster plan to encourage production of fruits and vegetables by granting 50% up to a maximum of 500,000 rupees for the purchase of a sheltered farm for hydroponics, and it has been extended this year for the purchase of a second sheltered farm. I have to inform the House that for the last 2 years, 59 planters have benefited under the sheltered farming scheme for the construction of greenhouses for a total amount of 15.9 million rupees. And that was when the grant was up to 250,000. We have therefore doubled the ceiling. To further encourage growers to adopt this ecological production method, which reduces the use of insecticides and pesticides considerably, VAT exemption is granted on the purchase thereof, and the threshold of the grant, therefore, once again, has been increased to 500,000 rupees. And in this financial year, a total sum of 50 million rupees has been provided. The third point, Mr. Speaker, sir, concerns our sugar sector. Sugar remains a major contributor of foreign exchange in our economy. Earlier, the Honourable Leader of Opposition mentioned that if we have to compare our yield, average yield of sugar compared to Tanzania and he mentioned Swaziland, now called Eswatini. That's correct. Our yield is less, but how are we tackling the issue? First of all, we should recognize why. We should understand why the yield is less. Of course, we cannot compare soil and climate of two different countries, but we have confirmation that cane, as you know, needs to be renewed in your cane field. One cane cannot continuously give you crop cycle over crop cycle. There is a limit. This is why there is a replantation scheme. It is estimated that even in the big corporate sector, for the big corporate planters, almost 40% of their field have not been replanted. So it's the same, ce qu'on appelle en créole, babacan. This has to be changed. You need to plant new ones. And this is why you will see in this budget, the replantation scheme has been increased from 35,000 rupees to 50,000 rupees per arpent. And importantly, the revolving fund has been set. What will be the revolving fund? It will provide concessionary loans. DBM will provide concessionary loans with an interest of 2.5%. What will they do with that? Is for replantation. This will lead to better production. We agree that we need to make better production, and there is also other schemes for certification. Because we earn money, we are paid on sugar, not on cane. It is on sugar. So the yield has to increase, and we are putting the necessary money in that sector. We are estimating there has been, Mr. Speaker, a steady increase on the world market for the price of sugar. If we are to compare from 2008, it has increased steadily. For crop 2021, the ex-syndicate price was 16,000 rupees. For crop 2022, it is set at 20,000. And therefore, this will lead to an increase in revenue, especially in foreign exchange. And in this budget, once again, for small planters, the guaranteed price of 25,000 rupees has been maintained with 80% crop advance, as well as the other advantages of the waiver on insurance premium payable to the SIFB and other accompanying measures. And it is important here that I highlight that for some small planters, that it was a historic measure at the time when the Honorable Prime Minister was also the Minister of Finance, where government had provided the sum of 15 million rupees for the purchase of the first ever cane harvester to be used by small planters. That cane harvester is already in operation, and government has signed a memorandum of understanding for the running and maintenance of the harvester with the MCAF, that is the Mauritius Cooperative Agricultural Federation. I'm pleased to announce that a second harvester is on its way, and it will be put at the disposal of small planters, once again under an MOU with MCAF. I have heard my colleague Honorable Uteem earlier asking about the national biomass framework. We have made considerable progress on this, Mr. Speaker, sir. The Mauritius Cane Industry Authority, the MCIA, was responsible for drafting the national biomass framework. The framework has been produced and has been submitted to the ministry, to my ministry, some 2 weeks back, 2 or 3 weeks back. The stage we have reached now is that the national biomass framework will be examined by cabinet, and an implementation plan will be rolled out. Coming to the ethanol framework, yes, I'm very thankful to Honorable Uteem to mention that. Why are we now thinking of ethanol? Once again, it's because of the consequences of the conflict with surging prices. There was an ethanol framework in the past, but of course it is no longer, it has to be adapted, it has to be revived, and this is being undertaken for Mauritius. That was on the sugar sector, Mr. Speaker. So one final item I want to highlight is the construction of a modern sugar storage facility at Richter, which will store about 150,000 tons of bagged sugar from sugar estates to be handled and stored prior to either local sale or export. This measure is in line with the World Bank recommendation geared towards reducing transport and logistic costs. Land clearing and survey work have been carried out so far. And therefore, for the sugar sector, for this year budget 2022-2023, government is therefore maintaining the 25,000 rupee per ton for planters, will continue to pay the premium of the SIFB in respect of those producing less than 60 tons of sugar, and will waive cess in respect of crop 2022. Yes, indeed. Now, the fourth, after the seeds and fertilizers, sheltered farming, the sugar sector, the fourth item I want to highlight is livestock and cattle, Mr. Speaker, sir. This, again, in line with our food security policy. Cattle reproduction farm was launched, the House will recall, in December 2019, with 43 heifers. The herd now has grown to 72 heads. The sale price has been reviewed to make it more accessible to breeders and farmers, in line with the vision to increase local production, together with availability of manure for the zero-budget natural farming. And zero-budget natural farming, it is important to highlight, has now found its way in bold terms in our budget speech. Secondly, the Melrose Cattle Reproduction Farm, Mr. Speaker, sir, will be expanded to 300 heads to allow provision of 200 calves annually to breeders. The setting up of the National Livestock Information System during the current financial year has allowed registration of some 1,022 farmers and identification of cattle, goat, and sheep. As at date, some 3,272 cattle and 187 sheep have been microchipped. This exercise is ongoing, where an average of 70 animals are microchipped every month. This exercise will be extended to road rigs during the coming financial year. The registration of farmers and animals has facilitated the certification for farmers to benefit from the heifer productivity incentive scheme and the calf productivity incentive scheme, and the incentive for milk production as well. 209 breeders have been certified to benefit from these schemes. In parallel, for livestock and cattle, Mr. Speaker, sir, comes the issue of disease surveillance. Disease surveillance is of crucial importance to develop the livestock sector, where animals of economic importance should be preserved. Laboratory equipment such as compact ELISA, microscope, and computers have been acquired. The ELISA kits have been obtained from the FAO, and which is going to provide additional equipment, vaccines, and expertise. Concerning the livestock feed subsidy scheme, Mr. Speaker, so it is important to highlight that the scheme, the subsidy has been increased this year once again. You will recall, the House will recall that last year this subsidy was increased, was doubled last year from 4 rupees to 8 rupees per kilo of livestock feed, and this year this figure has been brought to 10 rupees per kilogram. The livestock community will benefit greatly from this assistance. And the statistics of my ministry show that on average, 370 breeders apply for the subsidy per month. On the question of the production of venison, Mr. Speaker, sir, I am pleased to announce that we have agreed on the proposal we have received from venison producers for the setting up of a small slaughterhouse near feedlots on game reserves. And with respect to pig production, it is important to highlight that the contract for rehabilitation and cleaning of wastewater treatment system at Saint-Martin. Phase 1 has been awarded under the National Environment and Climate Change Fund. As mentioned in the budget speech, Bassin Requin, the area known as Bassin Requin, will also be undertaken in the near future. And the fifth point, Mr. Speaker, sir, is the production of honey, where we still import 90% of our honey consumption from foreign countries. With a view to reducing our dependency on import, a number of incentives have been provided. For this year, it is important to highlight that the target of honey to be produced was 25 tons, and I am pleased to announce that the production has in fact reached 30 tons. Under the beekeeping scheme, therefore, training is being provided to those interested in beekeeping, together with a 50% grant to a maximum of 20,000 to eligible beekeepers for the purchase of beekeeping equipment and material. 14 beekeepers have benefited from this scheme, and a total amount of 244,682 have been dispersed. 311 persons, including 65 women, were trained in beekeeping in year 2020-2021. And a new model of beehive that resists pests has been developed and distributed to beekeepers, including 100 such beehives distributed last week in Rodrigues. The increase in bee colonies will greatly help in pollination and in maintaining the overall health of our ecosystem. The new measure announced in this budget for the grant of 500 rupees per bee queen will further support the sector. In addition, my ministry, Mr. Speaker, sir, is moving towards the establishment of additional dedicated bee zones. As at now, 64 beekeepers have been given access to place bee colonies at Petit Sable, La Ferme, and Brado. And since 2016, the Forestry Service has embarked in the plantation of melliferous plants. Up to now, some 17,000 have been planted, and this endeavor will continue. The scheme for acquisition of CCTV also will be extended to beekeepers, producers, and the introduction of new melliferous plants will enable year-round production of honey. Other facilities are being provided by the DBM, such as duty concession. The sixth point I want to highlight, Mr. Speaker, sir, when we talk of food security, we also in parallel have to talk about trade facilitation, namely the issue of sanitary and phytosanitary certificates. The Sanitary and Phytosanitary Information Management Portal, which is an online platform, was launched on 23rd August 2021 to facilitate trade operators with all SPS-related information that they may require in order to comply with the regulatory obligations in line with the International Plant Protection Convention. The online portal also provides a platform for online application of phytosanitary certificates, and exporters and the public can submit applications electronically for the export and import of plants and plant products. As at date, 3,193 online phytosanitary certificates, including 150 for export of fruits and vegetables, have been issued by the National Plant and Protection Office. This is, dans les grandes lignes, Mr. Speaker, sir, how we articulate the food security policy. Because, we say it again, we are facing unprecedented difficulties, and we do not know when we will be where we will see better days. The conflict in Ukraine and between Ukraine and Russia doesn't seem to be ending soon. Before ending on the agriculture sector, I want to make a mention spéciale pour Rodrigues, Mr. Speaker, sir. In Rodrigues, the new FARE and Small Farmers Welfare Fund antenna office is now a reality. It was inaugurated last week at Citronelle. This will provide direct access to training, information, and services to the farmers and breeders of Rodrigue. Rodrigue was recently hit by the foot and mouth, and this has caused serious economic challenges for Rodriguan livestock sector. I have to highlight that with the help of the Indian Ocean Commission and l'Agence Française de Développement, the foot and mouth disease was contained last year with vaccination of animals, which was conducted both in Rodrigue and in Mauritius to prevent contamination. This has therefore allowed the movement of animals between Rodrigues and Mauritius to resume in February of this year, where the Mauritius Meat Authority is still the sole authorized entity to move animals from Rodrigue to Mauritius. It is only after completion of a sero-surveillance exercise that a decision will be taken as to resumption of normal movement, that is, other importers apart from Mauritius Meat Authority. It is interesting also to highlight that the price paid by the Meat Authority has gone up to 105 rupees per kg instead of the previous figure of 85 rupees per kg. Furthermore, for Rodrigues, we have agreed with the Agricultural Marketing Board for a floor price of 50,000 rupees per ton for the Rodriguan well-known onion called Bella Rose, excluding freight, and between 36 and 39,000 per ton, excluding freight, will be offered for the Francia variety of onion. I am also very pleased to announce that we have the Ministry of Agriculture, the Agricultural Marketing Board, and the Mauritius Shipping Corporation Limited have agreed on a discounted price for chilled containers on board the Black Rhino to move fresh products from Rodrigue to Mauritius. It has been noted that Rodrigues, furthermore, has the potential to produce around 40 tons of garlic annually. This is being explored. This will further reduce our import bill. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is just to highlight the amount of funding put in this budget in our food security strategy. This is not only a question of putting food on the table, but it is also in line with the policy of reducing import, thereby reducing spending our foreign exchange. Hopefully, we will boost our production, yet, as I have highlighted earlier, in 2020, we have seen, 2021, we have seen a growth of 9.5%. We expect it to be growing higher still. Before ending, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to mention on one item which will concern my office at the Attorney General's office, and that concerns le fameux problème du sale by levy. This government is fully conscious of the plight of those who have to face this very painful process of sale by levy. As announced in this budget, the law will be amended as detailed by my colleague, the Minister of Finance, last Tuesday. What I want to highlight is that during this reform of the sale by levy process, I want to reassure my two colleagues from Rodrigues that the specificities of Rodrigues also will be taken into consideration when amending the law. I mean to say that if a property is situated physically in Rodrigue, there should be special provisions concerning, for instance, the publication, and special provisions for the process itself, the way it is being held. Usually, the House will appreciate if a publication is done in a local newspaper, which is not even in circulation in Rodrigue. The general public is not aware of a sale by levy procedure being held, and there has not been many, but still one is still one too many. So we will take into consideration the problem of the specificities of Rodrigue during the time of the amendment to the sale by levy procedure. Before ending, I want to comment on what we are doing in these difficult times. I want to perhaps borrow the words of the Honorable Prime Minister. C'était le budget le plus difficile de l'histoire de notre pays. And this is indeed the case when we consider the context in which we are. And since this morning, when I've been listening to the opposition saying trop peu, pas assez, it's as if I've been listening to the same thing over year in, year out, the same thing over and over again. The less I say about that, the better. We know, in fact, the difficulty in which we are. C'est vrai, le budget le plus difficile à préparer. It will be in implementation. And the public out there, they know le sérieux avec lequel nous travaillons dans ce gouvernement. I am confident we will implement it, and it is together that we will face these difficult times. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Permettez-moi en premier de partager ce que j'ai entendu sur le budget. Il n'est pas mauvais du tout. J'ai tout fin gagné. Les enfants, autrement capables, salariés, village, ville. Et laissez-moi vous dire, quelques-uns de ces dictons ont été dits par quelques honorables membres à ma gauche de cette Chambre. On a même dit, budget là, la double fille. Alors, qu'est-ce qu'il me reste à ajouter si le budget est la double fille? Gulab Jamouni n'en avait pas. Néanmoins, permettez-moi, Monsieur le Président, d'apporter ma humble contribution au budget. Allow me to start with the greeting of peace. Men want an ideal life, ideal circumstances. However, God has not created any man ideal. There are trials and tribulation, difficulty and ease, honor and dishonor. There are a combination of factors that go together. To sum it up, the desire of man is to last, to live on. Est-ce que les circonstances de cette budget estimate sont réunies pour assouvir au désir de l'homme? Laissez-moi en premier, Monsieur le Président, vous montrer quelques photos que j'ai vues sur l'Internet. Les circonstances actuelles dont je parle, c'est voilà, les enfants avec des Kalachnikovs, avec des AK-47 à travers le monde. Des villes détruites. Des enfants qui dorment dans des bunkers avec leur famille, à la belle étoile. Des enfants qui partagent un plat. Et regardez-moi cet homme qui est en train de mettre la main sur la tête. On est dans des circonstances difficiles. Et voilà plus choquant, voilà le feu qui est réparti à travers le monde. I'll come to that. Give me some time. I'll come to you as well. Alors, Maurice évidemment font partie d'une économie globale où la crise internationale nous touche. Dans les circonstances, laissez-moi en premier partager my grief, my support à tous ces gens à travers le monde qui souffrent et aussi aux personnes qui ont perdu ses bien-aimés pendant le Covid et aussi remercier les frontliners pour leurs apports inestimables. Dans ce contexte, we have a budget for 2022-2023. Allow me, Mr. Speaker, sir, to analyze the budget. There has not been many orators who has taken the floor before me. But as a young member, allow me to share my surprise, how I'm baffled sometimes by the fact that on one side, we tend to have only good arguments for the budget. On one side, it's only bad argument. Is this budget only about just good or bad? There's no midway. Is there nothing to argue about? I humbly say there is so much about this budget that can be talked upon rather than criticizing. What gets very surprising, my analysis of why it is such a case as it's good or bad on one side is because so many people, so many honorable members omit to read. You know, just after the table of content, there are a table of medium-term macroeconomic framework, fiscal strategy, debt management. So many members, this big book is meant to be read. So many members fail to read it. Failing to read it causes them to go on a one-sided debate. And there's no one-sided debate today. It is a debate. It is a debate which has substance to cause Mauritius to move forward. So, let's say, despite the crisis, the war, we have a budget where the Minister of Finance assesses the risks, the shortcomings, the fluctuation, the unforeseen, the debt, the future, and he, I would say, humbly set out a strategy for this country in this dear time. It is clear nobody is going to deny. He has reduced considerably on big expenditures. It has been reduced. On the other side, I can also see loans that this country had undertaken has been rescheduled in terms of capital and interest. This is a cautious approach, knowing where we stand and devising the right strategy to move forward. This is what the minister, I believe, has done. What I'm so much tempted to say with the preface to this budget is that the minister appears to have come to with clean hand despite all the critics that have been flowing. Well, bad critic, unsubstantiated one. You would see, Mr. Speaker, sir, in the preface at page 9, Roman italic 9, the Minister of Finance talk of adopting a more prudent level, a more prudent approach. Why does he say so? At page 11, he talk of maintaining risk at an acceptable level. This is why today I argue he has come with clean hands. Why would he talk of bringing debt risk at acceptable level? He realized in this context, things are difficult, it's not easy to manage. So he finds a way in this difficult time to manage the situation with what we have, with the income and expenditure. He does the managing, I would say, quite fine. I believe it is a budget to lift public confidence. On a dit la double fille déjà. To lead a steady economy. In a time when post-COVID consumption and spending have decreased globally, it is evidenced also by huge republic as China, where the country is prosperous, still booming, however spending consumption has decreased. In fact, this budget, Mr. Speaker, sir, allows expansion of the middle class group. And if all potential come into play, we can be confident. Mais il nous faudra adapter. Alors, Mr. President, allow me to talk of another topic, because I wouldn't have time to go more into detail as to the analysis of the budget itself. Allow me to talk of two controversial matters as well. The increase in price of cigarette and alcohol. I haven't heard anything until now. Probably I will at a later stage. I believe at page 9 and 10 of the annexed budget speech, it becomes very clear. There are 2 pages where the price of alcohol and cigarette have increased. Is it a good thing? I argue it is a good thing. It is a good thing because cigarette or alcohol are luxurious item. They are not necessities, they cost a whole lot of money. Overall, a reduction in consumption of cigarette and alcohol would decrease the burden on healthcare. We do require a decrease of the burden on healthcare after we have witnessed what the frontliners have gone through. There are also several measures with regard to researchers in the medical field. However, I cannot forget, it doesn't get out of my mind, the mother in distress who is crying for her baby. I have the permission to take her name. I'll just use the first name. Kalisa was crying because she suffered. I have a copy of the medical certificate, which I've been granted permission as well to talk about. She suffered from meningitis, severe brain damage, speech development, fits, epileptic. I have nevertheless not seen any measure as regard to CBD use in this country. Could the use of CBD be the result of a decrease in consumption of hard drug? We all know synthetic has been a killer in this country. It could just be another industry, another source of income. It could so much help in massively reducing crime. Mr. Speaker, another topic which I believe requires that I pay attention to is road development in this country. The metro in this country. Are there money invested that have gone down the drain, Mr. Speaker, sir, or are they added value for this country? I argue they are added value. It has not been said, I doubt it is going to be said that most recently, with the construction of new road, traffic coming to Port Louis have reduced considerably. And it's not going to be said as well that a reduction in 1%, allow me to stress on it, emphasize on it, a reduction of 1% in time for traveling is equal to a growth of 0.25 in GDP of the country. So with all this road taken together with the metro, I have traveled by the metro, allow me to say. In fact, the metro brought me to Port Louis from Rosehill faster than a car on a busy day. The new roads, the flyovers, the metro are essential factors for the economic growth of this country. So I'm fully supportive of the project. I also, along the same vein, commend the construction of a new road from Melrose to Dubriel. That's ultimately going to decrease the time of travel. How can I not talk about the Terre Rouge-Verdun Lake Road? Good project, but it had to be cured by this government to make it workable, usable. So for added value, for growth in GDP, there are matters that might not be visible to the bare eyes or to the dishonest debater, but I believe we're on the right path. At a later stage, the same project would have cost so much more money. So we rather do it now, and it's being done by this present government. Another topic, Mr. Speaker, I would like to talk upon is agriculture. My learned, I'm saying learned friend from habit of being at court, but Honorable Minister Maneesh Gobin, Minister of Agriculture, did clearly set out all the various incentives that are going to be granted to farmers, those in the agricultural sector. From page 6, Mr. Speaker, sir, from page 6 to page 14, about 8 pages, there are measures, incentive, as to how to steer the agricultural sector. Measures ranging from farming, cultivation, fishing, apiculture, so many. It has been said, I'm not going to go into detail. But in this context of dire time, when it's difficult all across the world to put food on the plate, are they not important measures for this country? They are. I argue they are, in fact, vital measures for this country to achieve the desired result of self-sustenance, to increase productivity and production. And there are measures as well, not just to increase quantity, but also quality. Il y en a des mesures qui touchent des milliers. To add on top of it, I recently learned about 70% of our food consumption are rice and flour. We do not produce it because of our climate. However, we can produce anything in surplus because if hard time come, money might not be able to buy us goods, food, but we could exchange. I think it's commendable, all the measures taken by the Minister of Agriculture, by the Minister of Finance, by this government, to get this sector moving forward. However, I have a little question. Allow me to come to it a little later after discussing on one more topic. Mr. Speaker, tourism, construction, manufacturing are important sectors. They also reap foreign exchange. But just as agriculture, I feel we also lack in manpower. It gets sometimes so hard to find a laborer these days. What do we do under the circumstances? We have all these measures, and the opposing side come and say we have the measures all the time, and it's not coming into life. What do? We have to devise new way to reinforce our workforce. Allow me to remind this House, if we didn't have foreign workers today, probably we wouldn't have bread on our table. We barely find the young merchant wanting to join the bakery. They prefer office job, and it's legitimate because the level of education has increased. They want office jobs, they want white-collar jobs. What do? Allow me to state the bold fact. We need to open the door to foreign workers. However, it should be on a stringent condition, on control contract, with maybe Russian card, and strict laws so that they do not escape from the workplace to go and work elsewhere, penalizing those who cause them to be brought in this country. It's very important. If we do that, it will also be synonymous to the youngsters of this country will have the workforce required for them to set up their small and medium enterprise, to become entrepreneurs. This budget has the platform, allow for the opportunity to take shape. Allow me, on the same vein, to congratulate my learned colleague, Minister Sunil Bholah, who has been doing a formidable job with SME Mauritius. He has already described in depth as to all the measures that have been put into place. However, allow me to also say he had award ceremonies for young entrepreneurs who had attended 12-week course. And they were mainly women who were empowered, very, very happy that they had the opportunity to leave their home, go in a workshop, attend to a course, and obtain a certificate. For these young entrepreneur women and men, I believe they are going to move forward in life, and they require a workforce. I'm also sure that my dynamic Foreign Minister of Labour have the desired competence to achieve the objective in terms of manpower. Allow me to quote a few places and countries where foreign workers are very important for the economy. For example, Dubai's local population to foreign is 15% local population to 85% of foreigners, about 750,000 people local to 3.5 million foreigners. So, for those who have fear in their heart as to what will happen with foreign workers, we should take it out. We can make it with strict laws and rules. Another country, Singapore, where the foreign workforce is approximately 40%. London, there is more than 37% non-British born. In Cayman Islands, which is another good place for offshore business, there is about 40% of the workforce who are foreigners. So altogether, I believe we can still make it, despite the time is difficult. I therefore very humbly invite the opposition to encourage the youth, inspire them, rather than paint a dark, dull picture of this country. Allow me to applaud the increase in tax deduction proposed for parents whose children are studying abroad as well. It's a very good measure. Allow me also to commend the bold measure of streaming during the previous budget more students to a technical and vocational field. In fact, we do require competence and professionalism in each and different sector. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me humbly also to add a few propositions as regard to how our country can reap more forex. As regard to tourism, I believe it's time to open the door for more airlines, have a more sustainable national air carrier. We can also work in terms of the Minister of Sport, work toward athletic tourism or environmental tourism for the Minister of Environment. Rivers and lakes can create activities. We can have dedicated trail tourism, or even religious tourism. Despite Mauritius is a secular state, we can have a religious tourism because we are among the very few countries in this world where so many religions coexist peacefully. And I hope it continues to stay that way. I also commend the different investment for residence scheme, but we need to exercise caution and prudence. Et pour ne pas pénaliser les citoyens mauriciens. Et je trouve que c'est peut-être bien que le PM maintienne un contrôle sur ces dossiers. J'y crois en le Premier ministre jusqu'à preuve du contraire. Je vous demande de le faire aussi. N'écoutez pas les dires sans fondement. It has been talked as well, it has been argued by my friend from the opposition that we should look more towards the Africa route. I believe at least one good proposition. I think the government is looking into the Africa route, and we should continue looking thereat. I started proposing a national cargo vessel. However, I take with satisfaction that the government has decided to charter two vessels eminently to pallier au manque le problème qu'on a avec la transportation. And also, it's going to be very important to brand our Mauritian product. It has been done, it's being done. I know SME as well are doing it. However, we need to be more forceful with regard to the Mauritian branding. And finally, as regard to proposition, I also believe more foreign students for technical courses must be welcome to this country in order to bolster the workforce on a determinate visa, work visa, at a later stage. Mr. Speaker, sir. It is also very important at this stage. I know there are so much that's going to be said about the police force, les vidéos de torture. At page 82 of the budget estimate, vote 2.5, I see 10.9 million is provided as total expenditure. Alors, comment ne pas parler des vidéos de torture? Qu'est-ce qu'ils vont essayer de clamer? Le Premier ministre est responsable? Mais non. Laissez-moi faire part de notre position en premier. OML, nous le condamnons avec force. Le gouvernement, par la voix du Premier ministre, l'a condamné haut et fort. Une enquête a été ouverte. We cannot be held responsible for some bad apple qui abusent de leur pouvoir. Just as the previous government cannot be accused. Voilà, c'est qu'à faire. Les sanctions, je suis sûr, vont être prises. Je demande peut-être pour un changement d'attitude dans la force de policière, dans la façon dont il opère. Mais ça découle de l'homme et non pas des décideurs. Et je souhaite qu'ils se ressaisissent, surtout ceux qui abusent de leur pouvoir. Je veux néanmoins faire toujours confiance aux nombreux honnêtes et responsables policiers mauriciens. À la page 78 à 81 du budget, on établit clairement les nouvelles stratégies de la police et je veux faire confiance. À ce moment, laissez-moi, Monsieur le Président, répondre à ma détracteur. Je me sers de mon page Facebook pour atteindre les nombreux amis qui me suivent. Je suis aussi avocat, j'en ai nombreux amis policiers. Et ma page, c'est à partager des messages à eux et au grand public, non pas au Premier ministre. Le Premier ministre nous soutient et partage toujours une entente cordiale avec moi et mon parti. Il me reste accessible directement. Alors, à bon entendeur, cessez la diffusion des informations non vérifiées. I'll try to go very fast on on avait dit, on est négligible à vos yeux, le petit, on n'y comptait plus, on y disait. Mais à vous, chers détracteurs, ne voyez-vous pas ce qu'on a accompli en moins de 8 ans? Qui dit mieux? Ne le disiez-vous pas qu'on aurait banni le Kourbani? Ne le disiez-vous pas que cette alliance n'allait pas durer? Mais on y est toujours. Moi et Raoult, l'honorable Raoult, nous l'avons raflé dans le des circonscriptions rurales, mené par l'idée qui avait défié le Deuxième République. Et voilà, contre toute attente, le petit, le jeune Amal est là présent ce moment historique où les femmes musulmanes se voient rétablir leurs droits. Vous ne l'avez pas fait. On est là, on a participé et on voit le jour. Le mariage musulman seront reconnus tardivement. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Premier ministre, Monsieur le ministre des Finances et Madame la ministre de la Sécurité sociale. Surtout, this budget comes in a context of intensifying hate against minorities, religious extremism prone by some, again, bad apple. But these measures clearly demonstrate a respect of the Constitution, freedom of religion. Laissez-moi ajouter du matière à l'argument. Pour ceux ou celles qui trouvent dans cette mesure des raisons pour polémiquer. Le Code civil reconnaissait déjà le mariage religieux. J'en ai une copie. C'est là du Code civil. La Constitution, section, l'article 11, Protection of Freedom of Conscience, nous garantit freedom of religion. Dans ce contexte, est-ce que ce n'est pas important pour que ce gouvernement reconnaisse les injustices qui ont perduré pendant des décennies? Alors, but there is one more issue that I would like to discuss, maybe at a later stage the Minister of Finance can enlighten us on it, est-ce que sur le nom de la Constitution, Freedom of Religion, are we going to allow one man to be responsible for the pension of 2 women? Is it what the Constitution has provided. Are the 10,000 rupees going to be divided into 2, 3? I didn't have a chance to go much more into detail, but I hope to get further enlightenment. But maybe it's not the best thing to happen. One man, he sustained one woman, and this is what he contributes to the budget. We probably have to work out a solution. Et non pas faire des polémiques, définitivement. Parce que it was said by Mahatma Gandhi. Surtout pour le musulman, c'est un appel du fond de mon cœur. It was said by Mahatma Gandhi. I became more than ever convinced that it was a sword. It was not the sword that won the place for Islam in those days, in the scheme of life. It was the rigid simplicity, the utter self-effacement of the Prophet, the scrupulous regard for his pledge, his intense devotion to his friend and followers, his intrepidity, his fearlessness, his absolute trust in God, and his own mission. These, and not the sword, carried everything before them and surmounted every trouble. So I'll invite everybody to accept these measures without indulging in an unwanted argument. Let's be realistic about it. De toute façon, au ML, on restera le rempart contre les injustices, les abus, et on y prendra toujours position pour le bien-être du mauricianisme avec le gouvernement. We have always made the right move at the right time pour le mauricianisme, surtout quand nos opinions ne sont pas respectées. Monsieur le Président, permettez-moi de brosser un peu le tableau de ma circonscription. Les mesures phares de ma circonscription sont très bien accueillies, surtout les endroits qui étaient victimes de l'inondation. Il y a un masterplan à Bramsan, à Clémentia, à Sanssouci-Montagne-Blanche. Au niveau sportif, il y en a plusieurs municipalités qui verront le jour, à Lessieur, Camp-de-Masse, Clémentia, Bramsan, Béléa. Il y aura water pressure à Melrose et Beauchamp, des endroits où on avait problème avec la fourniture de l'eau. Il me faut aussi mettre sur papier l'aboutissement imminent du market fair de Béléa, avec plus de 500 étals, un multicomplexe à Montagne-Blanche, un médiclinique à Béléa, les autres travaux de drain, asphaltage, municipaux et projets qui ont déjà abouti. Permettez-moi aussi de féliciter et remercier le conseil du district de Flac et Moka pour les nombreux aboutissements. J'en suis presque à la fin, Monsieur le Président. C'est difficile pour moi aujourd'hui d'être assis ici comme membre d'un parti, membre du gouvernement, et peut-être après se retrouver dans le tiers, être neutral. C'est vraiment très difficile. Mais je vous en supplie, tous les membres. Je vous en supplie humblement. Il y en a des milliers qui nous regardent. Peut-être ils cesseront de nous regarder. Alors, alimentez le débat. Lisez pas tout ce qui a été écrit ici et ailleurs. Réfléchissez. Gardez l'attention de nos chers citoyens. Ils nous ont payés pour être là. Lisez pas, faites du débat. C'est important. Ce budget n'est pas que la double fee. Ce budget n'est pas que la double fee, mais il y en a du matière pour le progrès et surtout pour le mauricianisme dans toutes ses cultures et sa splendeur. On peut avoir des millions et des billions, mais des fois, un morceau de pain, un verre d'eau nous apporte la joie et la tranquillité. Prenons la paix et l'amour. Merci.
Shakeel Mohamed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I must admit, I listened to the honorable orator that preceded me with a lot of interest. I will, as I go along in my intervention, address the issues that have been raised by him. I prefer to park it, if I may, for a few minutes and call upon him for his patience, since I'm sure he wishes that I address certain of the points raised by him. However, allow me to address the House, Mr. Speaker, to start out by referring to the background, as the honourable ministers who have spoken and the honourable members who have spoken before me have rightly said. The background and the context of this budget is of utmost importance. Yes, we are living through historical times. And it is the way we react and the way we act in the face of those challenges that will determine whether we are to be congratulated by posterity or whether we are going to be condemned and thrown and sent to the gallows. That is all what it is, if I am to simplify it. It is not a question of government, to use a terminology that is very often used in Creole, tape l'estomac, or risdra upon itself, and tries to look good about everything it does, or even the opposition just constantly criticizing. That's neither here nor there. But I think it's important at this stage to remind the government side that it is indeed the right of the opposition and the duty of the opposition to shine the light upon the lacunas in what government is doing. It is not incompatible with our function. We are duty-bound to shed light and to show what this government is doing wrong. That is the duty of all opposition. It is clear that some members of government are very allergic to criticism, when in fact it is our responsibility as elected members of this House. I go even further. It is also the responsibility of backbenchers to draw the attention of government of where it is going wrong. And if at any stage of its governance, government is seen to be totally confused with the position that it will hold on any subject, it is the responsibility of all backbenchers on all sides of the House to draw the attention of government to the wrongdoing and lacunas and to force them and make them, convince them in a democratic manner to bring changes. This introduction that I've tried to make is in fact follows the remarks of Honorable Orator that spoke before me, Honorable Nazwali, because it seems that there is somehow, someplace in his words, he is drawing attention to the confusion that government is in. He is indeed drawing attention to the wrong interpretation of the law of a minister of this government. And it takes a lot of courage on his part to at least speak out and say that there is wrong that is going on in government. And I note, not in between the lines, he has said it without any doubt and without fear or favor. So for that, I congratulate him. He is the only one who has had the courage to do so. I see that his colleague next to him has been passing him a few papers. I hope that he also is together in this adventure of being courageous to state out loud what you believe. This is a first in the life cycle of this government, and I'll get into detail in a few minutes, and we will see at the end of the day whether you deserve congratulations and whether you'll be able to stand up to what you've tried to indicate to us. So, Mr. Speaker, when one starts out by looking at the background, and I have to refer here to important factors, the background, Afrobarometer study. And this is what the Honourable Minister of Finance, bizarrely, makes no reference to in his budget speech. He does not tell us that according to the Afrobarometer study, and I read the report dated the 24th of May 2022, that 2/3 of Mauritians say, 66% of Mauritians say that the country is going in the wrong direction, representing a 16 percentage point increase since 2017. That is also part of the background. 66% of this country believes that this country is going in the wrong direction. It says that more than 6 out of 10 Mauritians, 6 out of 10, 63% of this country consider the current economic situation either very bad or fairly bad. A 26 percentage point increase since 2017. Now, you cannot, therefore, Mr. Speaker, say that things are getting better. Now, if the government want to auto-congratulate themselves because they feel they are doing well, I pause here for a minute to advise them, humbly so, to at least consider what the views of the population are. Do they believe that you are doing things well, or do they believe that things are getting worse? That is why, on this side of the House, we have often invited members of government to get off their pedestal, to climb down their ivory tower that they seem to be so comfortably perched upon, and to be connected with the people. Because when you look at the title that the Honourable Minister has chosen for this budget, with the people, for the people, there is nothing further from the truth. Nothing further from the truth. It cannot be with the people, for the people, when the Honourable Minister of Finance comes out and ignores the fact that there are statistics out there, surveys out there, that says that almost 2/3 of citizens expect that the economic situation will worsen in the next 12 months. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I think it is important to be able to concentrate my intervention on issues that deserve to be brought out into the light. It is important for me to be able to explain to the people that the lies that have surrounded the economic argument and figures and facts need to be shown in their true light. The maneuvers, the Machiavellian maneuvers of the Minister of Finance, I do not believe that they are politically honest. They are devoid of any political honesty. That also must be brought to the attention of our people. Let me start out by what he is offering, and he likes to auto-congratulate himself by saying that this government, and he tries to encenser le Premier Ministre in both languages, since he is very good at both of them, Molière and Shakespeare, and he encensait le Premier Ministre by saying to him, it is all thanks to you, sir, that I have managed to come up with this budget. Without you, there is nothing. Without you, no one thinks on this side of the house. Without you, there are no ideas. Without you, there is no vision. We are nothing without you. You are on your own, one-man government. This is what he says. Et ce qui peut faire encore plus rire, ceux qui l'emboîtent le pas et lui disent à chaque fois en conclusion ou au milieu de leur discours, au début, qu'il faut encenser notre cher Premier ministre pour s'assurer sûrement de l'investiture aux prochaines élections. Mais laissons ça de côté pour un moment. So when he says that he is giving 1,000 rupees to our elderly as from the age of 60, and 65, another 1,000 rupees. One thing which I would love him to answer as, I believe, in my humble view, a very important question that I believe he should answer, is why is it that he did not give any increase in pension to the elderly in 2020? Why is it that, oh yes, there was no increase. You see, you yourself don't seem to be aware, and that is quite worrying, my dear Minister. The Minister of Finance is not even aware that the orphans, the widows, the old age pensioners back in 2020 were not even given a compensation increase that you have to get at the end of the year. December 2020, no compensation was given to widows. Why? No compensation was given to orphans. Why? Nothing was given to the old age pensioners in 2020. Why? In spite of the fact that it came immediately after the huge promises that were made during the election campaign of 2019. Let me go further and let me interrupt the thought process of the Honourable Minister of Finance for a little second and ask him, Mr. Speaker, sir, to answer the other question. Why is it that nothing was given to orphans in terms of compensation in 2021? Why is it that nothing was given to widows' compensation in 2021? Nothing was given to the old age pensioners in 2021. Why is it, sir, that nothing was in the offing for those categories of those citizens that today, for the first time, after an absence of 2 years, he says that they deserve the government's help? Did they not deserve your help in 2021? Did they not deserve your attention in 2020? Why were they forgotten? Does any other minister on the other side of the House have the answer to that? I hope so. Because no one has addressed this issue at all. So if they were forgotten in 2020 and they were forgotten in 2021, and on average, they should have obtained at least 500 rupees in 2020. They should have obtained 500 rupees in 2021. And in 2022, the least they should have obtained is more than 500. Mr. Speaker, this government owes our old age pensioners, widows and orphans money. They are owed at least 500 rupees in terms of increase in those allocations. It is their due, it is their right that this government has robbed. Unless I am given an explanation. Le moment doit arriver quand l'honorable ministre des Finances doit trouver le courage, avec la facilité qu'il a de s'exprimer en français, de venir dire à nos citoyens, ceux qui ont 60 ans ou ceux qui ont plus de 60 ans, pourquoi de l'oubli en 2020? Pourquoi les avoir oubliés en 2021? Pourquoi avoir oublié les orphelins, les veuves en 2020 et 2021? Et pourquoi aujourd'hui, à la veille des élections municipales, il vient prétendre que ce gouvernement n'a pas oublié les démunis? Si ce n'est pas cela, une hypocrisie politique de la pire espèce, I do not know what else I could describe it as. I say it again. He is the expert in figures. He needs, therefore, to calculate, and his calculation will show that he owes the widows, he owes the pensioners, he owes the orphans.
Move on. You already made your...
No, I have to conclude on another important part. And now that he has put a beautiful har in the neck of the Prime Minister to say that the Prime Minister, without him, there is nothing. Is he, in other words, saying that the reason they were forgotten was because the Prime Minister authorized them to be forgotten? Is he saying that it is the Honorable Prime Minister, Praveen Kumar Jagannath Pradhan Mantri ji, it is because of him that he forgot those vulnerable? Or maybe the Prime Minister is not to be blamed, but it is only him and no one else. He should choose. He should choose. And I think the answer should be clear, without any long-winded explanation, without getting lost in translation. Let me go to the other issue of 1,000 rupees being given to those who are earning until up to 50,000 rupees. He is taking it from the CSG. The Honorable Minister of Finance clearly is a product of France. In France, they started out by using the CSG as though it was only going to be for retirement, and then they expanded its application to things which were not originally intended to cover. Therefore, whatever is good in a country, we should try to emulate. But please, in the name of the Almighty, let us try to stay away from bad practice. And the bad practice in certain jurisdictions are here clear to show us the right way. And the right way is not what the Honorable Minister of Finance is doing, because the Honorable Minister of Finance is saying, I am taking money from CSG that was originally intended for what? For retirement. But he's going to take that money and give it as allocation. And he goes around together with all the members on the other side of government, with the exception of Honorable Nazir Ali and his honorable colleague who has just left. Because obviously, I take it that they do not share what this government shares. Clearly. He gives the impression with all those other followers that as though this 1,000 rupees is an increase in salary. Que ce soit connu à partir de ce moment, que ces 1000 roupies d'allocation, c'est précisément ce que c'est, une allocation et non pas une augmentation salariale. Le ministre des Finances, l'honorable ministre, vient nous dire en introduction à la nécessité d'augmenter ou donner cette allocation que le coût de la vie a augmenté. Sur cela, il a raison. Mais je lui pose encore une autre question. Il n'était pas nécessaire, monsieur le ministre, d'attendre le budget pour venir soulager la souffrance du peuple mauricien. Pourquoi avoir attendu le budget? Je pose la question. Est-ce qu'il y avait une nécessité légale d'attendre le budget pour donner une allocation? Je connais la réponse. Non, il n'y avait pas de nécessité légale. Est-ce qu'il y avait une nécessité administrative d'attendre et de faire attendre la population pour donner les 1000 roupies mensuelles? Non, il n'y avait pas de problème administratif. Le ministre des Finances aurait pu, il y a longtemps, plus de 3 ou 4 mois ou même 5 mois, donner cette allocation. Pourquoi alors avoir attendu? Si ce n'est simplement de s'acheter une virginité politique. Rien d'autre. Rien d'autre. La virginité politique, clairement, la crédibilité politique que ce gouvernement n'en a plus, le ministre des Finances se sert de stratagèmes, se sert de manœuvres que je dirais politiquement frauduleuses pour venir de l'avant, pour dire, voilà, c'est maintenant que je vais vous donner cet argent. Mais que la population le sache, ce n'est pas une augmentation salariale. Alors je pose la question, pourquoi ne pas avoir accordé dans le mois de juin, ou plutôt, comme je l'ai dit il y a quelques minutes, une augmentation salariale à tous ceux qui touchent moins de 50 000 roupies? Si le ministre des Finances reconnaît dans son discours, que ce soit en anglais, que ce soit dans la version anglaise ou la version française, qu'il y a eu effectivement une augmentation énorme du coût de la vie, pourquoi alors ne pas donner une augmentation salariale pour an increase in the basic salary, for it to be counted as an increase in remuneration? Because this allocation is not to be equated with an increase in salary, Honourable Speaker. And this is where I call it, and why I call it a fraud. It is a fraud because you make people believe that they are obtaining an increase in salary. No. It is a fraud because you give them what they have put aside. This money is not something that is from the consolidated fund. It is not from the pockets of members of government. It is not from any of their pockets. It is money that workers of this country have contributed in the CSG. Therefore, it is their own money that you are trying to be generous with. How much of a fraud is it quand quelqu'un essaye de se montrer généreux avec l'argent qui appartient à la personne qui l'a mis de côté, pas dans le fond, the consolidated fund. So then the question which the Honourable Minister of Finance will have to answer, what will happen in December when there has to be talks about compensation, annual compensation? What will happen? Is he saying that the cost of living is going to get better? The IMF says things will get bad. Economists say things will get bad. OECD says things will get bad. The World Bank says things will get bad. If things are going to get worse, the rates of interest are increasing in the States, the rates of interest increasing in Europe. The value of our currency will keep on going down. The price of commodities will keep on going up. The price of fuel will not go down. What will happen in December? Will you then ask the private sector, whom you seem so willing to protect at each and every angle and corner that you adopt, will you ask those patrons then to come and give that 1,000 rupees as from January 2023? And if not, why not? That is the question that the Honourable Minister of Finance has to answer. If not, why not? I say that as from now, I underline it again, we believe that yes, the prices of commodities have skyrocketed. Yes, the price of fuel has not been brought down. Yes, the price of fertilizers have increased the very next day of his presentation of the budget, the very next day. So things are not in control. And when I am to speak through you, Mr. Speaker, to the Honourable Minister of Finance, I'm appealing not to his political acumen. The issue here is not of getting re-elected. The issue is about saving the country. There is a stark difference between wanting to get re-elected and saving the country. Because if you want to get re-elected, this is the recipe that you have shown us, where there is, can you imagine, Mr. Speaker, let us, like any child listening to me today, any student listening to me today, go to the budget speech of the Honourable Minister of Finance, go to the English version, go to the French version, go control, find the word productivity. You can't find it. Can you imagine a budget of the Minister of Finance after almost 2 years of problems because of COVID? The word productivity is not there. Can you imagine about efficiency, about production in the manufacturing sector when statistics show us that the statistics are so bad? IMF says we're doing badly when it comes to exports. The minister says we're doing very well. And the minister says nothing about efficiency. Honourable Bholah made a speech just now about his ministry. Did he ever come up and tell us how this government is going to address the issue of lack of productivity and efficiency? They are only concerned with trying to use money that is not theirs, pretend it's theirs, pretend that they are the most generous of all, and then they want to give themselves a political virginity for an election that they don't want to give, for an election that they're scared to face. So this is the be-all and end-all of this government. Lack of vision, lack of strategy, l'audacité, il n'avait pas. Let me put the question to the Honourable Minister of Finance. If only I had the opportunity of cross-examining him one day, this would be the day I would enjoy my whole career as a politician, because he would be an easy witness. One thing I would like to ask him is the following. Do you think it's fair? Do you think it's fair to basically, when this, and I'm here speaking about the person who leaves his home, many leave their homes and go to work 4 or 5 in the morning, fishers, gardeners, artisans, ouvriers, those who work part-time. Do you think it's fair that they are victim of a regressive taxation, which is called VAT? VAT on fuel that this government refuses to reduce? Do you know that the inflationary pressure on the rise is contributed to a certain extent by the policy of this government, not to bring down the price of fuel? Let us imagine the inflationary pressure, the effect of the increase of price of fuel on this little simple man or woman going to work that earns maybe not even more than 11,000 rupees a month. Let's imagine that man, that woman, that citizen going to work and the price of increase of fuel on that person, the effect it has on that person as opposed to one of the ministers or even myself or even the members of parliament here or even you, Mr. Speaker, or even the president or even the prime minister or even the head of a private company, the CEO of one of the listed companies. Do you know the difference? The difference is for those who can afford it, they don't care that it increases because it is most probably not even them paying for the fuel. But for those who can't afford it, it means the world to them. The fact that you refuse to recognize that this has to be brought down. Why not follow the good example set in India? Why do you always talk about India as being the be-all and end-all of your policy, internal and external? But when it comes to following good practice, you turn a blind eye. In doing so, you turn a blind eye to the suffering of the people, the little men, the women of this country who cannot joindre les deux bouts. I plead to this government to bring down the price of fuel, and it follows my plea that they should also consider that this 1,000 rupees, even though it is insufficient, that it should also be indexed as their salary increase and not an allocation. Because when the man and woman goes to the bank at the end of the month, he wants to take a loan, he wants to take a loan or a overdraft facility, the bank will tell him, vous n'avez pas eu d'augmentation salariale, monsieur ou madame. Ce que le gouvernement prétend est faux. Ce que le gouvernement prétend est mensonge. Parce qu'il n'y a pas eu... Yes?
Move on, move on. Move on, move on.
Move on from where?
You are repeating your argument. Madam Clerk, could you please read that part of the standing order, not to repeat arguments?
I know standing orders. Before you read it, I know it better.
Okay.
So I will follow what you say. I'll follow
on.
what you say. I'll move on. I'll say it in French now. So what I'm saying is we need to recognize the suffering of the people. And I know that obviously standing orders, Mr. Speaker, say that cannot be repetitive. I totally agree with you. But then again, if I have to repeat myself for people to understand that suffering cannot be ignored, I'm sure you will understand. I'm sure you will.
There's no but. 30 minutes left.
I've got 30 minutes left, and there's more to say, don't worry. Anyway, so let me come now to another issue, which is corruption. The report of the PAC that is chaired by Honorable Uteem and all the members therein did a fantastic job. I talked about that recently in one of my interventions. The report of the Director of Audit, also a fantastic job. Why is it that, and that's another question for the Minister, why is it that this budget makes no room and no provision for any mechanism whatsoever to identify the wrongs? Not one wrong, many wrongs. The reports make reference to violation of public procurement law. The reports make reference to clear acts of corruption. The reports make reference to clear, purposeful absence of transparency and accountability. Why is it that the Honourable Minister of Finance, in the process of preparing this budget, that is indeed a historical one, why is it that he forgets that there is the urgent need to address those lacunas, those manquements, referred to clearly and distinctly in those two reports. Why? Why does he try to pretend that those facts do not exist? Why is he ignoring the mess that exists in the Ministry of Health? Why is he ignoring the reports and the fingers of blame pointing at the Ministry of Health and those administering that ministry and officers within that ministry when it comes to procurement? Why does he ignore it? Why does he turn a blind eye to that? Why is it that he refuses to recognize that this government is losing the fight against corruption, but nay, is even helping to further the fight against corruption? Oh, not the fight, but the defeat against corruption. This is what this government is furthering us into. Why is it that he didn't even try to address this issue? My friends who addressed this August Assembly before me, Honorable Uteem, talked about the whole issue about torture. Was it so difficult for the Prime Minister, who, since everything goes through him, to at least ask the Minister of Finance, let's put a paragraph there, at least a few lines, to recognize that we need to ensure that violence by certain police officers is nothing more than what is localized, as we already know. Let us ensure that it is not only the tip of the iceberg. Let us embark upon measures and tools and equipment that will protect not only the police officer against false accusations, but the victims, citizens, against abuse by police officers. Body cameras. True it is that the safety camera, the Safe City camera itself never worked. And it has sections of the films deleted, coincidentally or otherwise, God knows, when it comes to finding murder victims, those who have committed murder in the Kisnan case and other cases. All of a sudden, reels and reels of video and times are just absent. But why is it that the government cannot even consider that they have to address this issue about torture? What the minister talked about is the police academy. It reminds me of the serial Police Academy 1, 2, and 3 in the 80s, because they're just made with a bunch of jokers. This is what he wants? This is how you address torture? Look at the image we have outside of Mauritius. The press, international press, talking about torture in our police stations. And the international press will now talk about what? The inability of this government to recognize that there is a problem? The inability to find solutions? Or the refusal? Or is it that they are doing it on purpose? Because they need to ensure that their dominance goes on and the fear in the people goes on. That is why they do not want to have the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. Lame excuses on the part of the Attorney General. Why is it that we don't have it? Is it because we want to continue with having political victims of the police? Is that it? Arrest people and then pretend to inquire because Lord said no? This is why? I know that very often when, I'm sure the Honourable Minister of Finance, Mr. Speaker, will recognize that when Shakespeare says something is rotten in the state of Denmark, I'm sure that he can smell the rot in Mauritius right now, and it is on his side of the house. Let me say that, on his side of the house. Is it fair to ask someone to pay the same price for fuel à la pompe, qui n'a même pas plus que 10 000 roupies par mois, il doit aller travailler. Il va payer le prix, le même prix que vous les ministres, nous les députés, les PDG des sociétés privées. Is that normal? Is it normal that we pay the same price? And I would like him to answer that. Is it fair that we pay the same price for one Bourbon gas? They love to regurgitate
we put on the subsidy, but you're subsidizing the rich as well. You're subsidizing the millionaires. You're asking them to pay the same price for gas as the poor. Is this fair? You will say, but when you were in government, you did the same thing. But when we were in government, we did not live through the crisis that we're living through now. We have not seen this level of indebtedness that this country is now living through. We have not known it. Therefore, it is urgent for us to be able to think en dehors du boîte, as my honorable friend Maneesh Gobin used to say. It is important to think outside of the box, come up with measures that are daring and not only for your political survival. The difference between a politician and a leader: choose to be a leader and not a politician. Mr. Speaker, sir, he says he wants to protect the employees. He says, empty slogan, vide de sens, ou maybe il ne connaît même pas le sens de ce qu'il dit. With the people, for the people. I'm going to demonstrate now, again, why I believe that he does not say what he believes, or maybe he doesn't understand what he says. With the people? The Director of Audit's report, page 344 and 345. Ou maybe the Honorable Minister of Finance n'est pas vraiment concerné par ce qu'il y a dans le rapport du directeur de l'audit. À la note 29.2, pension funds. 72 public sector bodies record deficits totaling 33.3 billion. I quote, at paragraph 24.2 of my audit report for the financial year 2019-2020, I pointed out that the financial statements of 63 public sector bodies submitted to the National Audit Office showed that pension funds under their defined benefits pension plans were running deficits totaling 26 billion as at 30th of June 2019. A follow-up exercise was carried out based on financial statements submitted as at the 30th of June 2020 to my office. The financial statements of 72 public sector bodies as at the 30th of June 2020 showed an aggregate deficit of 33.3 billion rupees. The Minister of Finance, Mr. Speaker, says, with the people, for the people. Were you with the people when you ignored this in 2020? I wasn't Minister of Finance. It wasn't Honorable Lejonga. It wasn't Honorable Ganou. It was, Mr. Speaker, the same, the one and only Honorable Padachi. He was the Minister of Finance. And he was being congratulated by the Honorable Prime Minister. And then, once again, he regurgitated that without Praveen Kumar Jagnnath, I am nothing, and I cannot think without him, and with him, and only him, that we can have a budget. Was it the Prime Minister who asked you to ignore this fund's 33.3 billion rupees deficit? Whose money is this? The money of the workers. And what is it? Defined benefit pension plans? Central Water Authority. Maybe Honorable Ganou will have to respond. 2 billion rupees of deficit in the pension plan fund? Rajonga, sorry, I do apologize. We'll get to you later. Mauritius Revenue Authority, 2 billion. Mauritius Broadcasting Corporation, almost 1 billion. Mauritius Institute of Education, almost 1 billion. Mauritius Private Secondary Education Authority, wow, 6.5 billion almost. Local authorities, the Minister of Local Government maybe will enlighten us. The local authorities have more than 4 billion rupees of deficit in the plan, the pension plan. 4 billion rupees of deficit. A total of 33.3 billion rupees of deficit. One simple question I ask once again the Honorable Minister of Finance. If you are serious in what you say, that it is all for the people, that it is all with the people, why did you choose to keep this under the rug, brush it under the carpet, and keep it silent and not even address it, not even in your annexes, not even in your speech, not even in the French version, not even in the English version, let alone your interview that you gave at the TV, at l'Express and all the other media? You kept silent. Why? Why? Who cares? Who cares? Because slogans are more important, Mr. Speaker, sir. With the people, for the people. But I will not say anything about the budget that's déficitaire. Je vais rester tranquille, parce que si je reste tranquille, ils ne vont pas savoir. Parce que si je parle trop, ils vont poser des questions. Et s'ils posent des questions, la vérité va triompher. Et si la vérité triomphe, le gouvernement va subir une défaite. N'est-ce pas? So I hope I have a réparti beaucoup plus intelligent qu'un Anyway. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, let me say, while I listened to Honorable Attorney General talk about, you will notice that the Honorable Attorney General, Minister of Agro-Industry, never even rebutted the previous orator. He could not even rebut Honorable Uteem in what he said. He chose to be supposedly the one who stays above the fray. He is paid by taxpayers' money. He is paid by taxpayers' money. He is accountable to this House. When Honorable Uteem says what he says it with reason. After having studied it, after having come up with a responsible speech, Honorable Uteem was totally entitled to make his remarks. The least the people expect is an Attorney General, Minister of the Republic of Agro-Industry, to respond to the criticisms. C'est ça la transparence, c'est ça la démocratie. Et c'est pour cette raison qu'aujourd'hui, la majorité des jeunes de ce pays ne voient pas d'un bon œil la direction que ce pays a pris depuis 2017. Les choses se sont empirées. But let me say to him, when you look at the budget of the Honorable Minister of Finance, once again, it is typical of the Honorable Minister of Finance. He flip-flops around. He flip-flops with measures, and his flip-flop measure in the field of agro-industry is even more totally flopped. Because at least when I look at Rwanda, that Honorable Uteem makes reference to, they are moving clearly from the primary sector of employment to the secondary sector of employment, and have brought in the tertiary sector of employment, and even brought in the fourth sector of employment, which Honorable Gobin, unfortunately, he's not here. The statistics of this country don't even make reference to the coordinate sector of employment, which covers computing and ICT and research and development. This is how backwards we are compared to Rwanda. Shame on this government, not on any minister. I don't want to be thrown out. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me now address the qualms of Honorable Deputy Speaker who made some remarks. I have listened very carefully to the Honorable Minister Kunju Shah make in a press conference that happened during the weekend. And I think it's important to put things in context. I totally agree with the views of my honorable friend Nazwali, who says that the civil code already provides for the recognition of a religious marriage. It's always there. And the reason it was there, ever back since 1982, because this is when it was brought in, 1981, I apologize, 1981. It was when Sir Siusaga Ramgulam brought it into the civil code following a promise that he had made to late Sir Abdul Razak Mohammed at the time of the elections for independence. It took the time that it took, but the promise was kept by Sir Siusagar Ramgoolam in 1981. It was blown away in 1987 by Sir Anirudh Jagnnath. It was blown to smithereens in 1987. I remember Honorable Ganu making speeches, and he himself was on the right side of the House when he criticized the wrong move of 1987. But then, in 1991, the MMM was in government, if memory serves me correctly, and things were brought right. The MMM could make the MSM see straight. Then, now we come up with myself, Honorable Mohamed, Osman Mohamed, myself and other members, many times who put questions. In 2014, the law was amended to allow those who were late to register and to benefit from the mistake and blunder of Sir Anirudh Jagnnath MSM government in 1987. The law was amended by way of regulations. And then we come to today. But before we come to today, many times we put questions. When we put questions, the only one who was sympathetic to it was from the question of Honorable Osman Mohamed, was the Honorable Minister of Finance presently. But Honorable Gayan, Honorable Sina Tambou, ministers of the previous MSM government until 2019, were totally réfractaires and said, no way. We will refuse to correct the mistake committed in 1987. And those on the other side, some of them know what I'm talking about. But now, when you look at what Honorable Kunju Shah has said, because before we get there, maybe a minister of the Republic who is not even aware what the law says today is dangerous, in fact. So that is why I am quite confused. No, sorry, I do apologize. The government is confused. Because the position that is adopted by Honorable Kunju Shah is as follows. I read what is reported and what she said. Lorsqu'un homme marié, I quote, peu importe de quelle communauté, décède, son épouse percevra une pension de 9 000 roupies. Now, she doesn't deserve a medal there because that's the law. She's not nothing new. But she goes on to say, s'il y en a des madames, pas des madames qui pour gagner 9 000 sakens. Cette somme sera ensuite divisée entre les deux veuves. Garde ça bien en tête qui a dit, grâce à ça, mes yeux-là, nous, in alcorise et l'injustice incroyable contre sa madame là. But what she fails to understand is l'injustice that she makes reference to was en 1987, par Anirudh Jagnnath, Prime Minister. What she fails to do, you see, because, you see, maybe she's given a speech to read and she doesn't even know the facts and the intricacies of it, les tenants et les aboutissants, so she doesn't know history. The reason why the Muslim Family Council came into being and it was corrected in 1991, MMM was in power. That is the reason. I always have to say that is the truth. So, when she says now that une pension de 9 000 roupies, s'il y a 3 femmes qui sont mariées religieusement à un homme, va être divisée en 3, but she doesn't know what the law says. The law says that in the Civil Code, in the Civil Status Act, which is law today, all women married religiously or civilly are considered to be married. As long as for the religious one, it is registered at the Muslim Family Council. Simple. So every single person in Mauritius who have a simple notion of what reading the law is about knows what the law is. There is no issue there. So what the Honorable Minister Kunju Shah has done is take the situation of the law today, which entitles every single woman who is married religiously. If a man is married to 4, he has 4 religious wives, they are all 4 entitled to pension of 9,000 rupees each. That is the law today. And this is not, she seems not even to be aware of. And that is why I am saying that there seems to be a total mess in the government, because Honorable Nazir Ali is totally right when it comes to his interpretation of things. He's a lawyer, he knows. But the Honorable Minister Kunju Shah, being a minister, I presume, should have advisors. I take it that she is not the minister responsible for the issue. But if what she is saying becomes truth, then there is nothing that is being corrected. In fact, it is being made worse. So I think that, as the English language says, they should stop getting their knickers in a twist and try to come up with a bloody solution when it comes to what the reality of the law is today, and not basically say anything that comes from the top of their head simply to cow and bow to extremist right movement that have a problem with equality of the law. The difference between Sir Sagar Ramgoolam, who in 1981 understood and implemented, as opposed to what the mess and the confusion in government today, is stark. C'est ça la différence entre le Parti travailliste et le MSM. Le Parti travailliste avait promis la communauté musulmane, loin à l'époque des discussions de l'indépendance, entre Sir Sagar Ramgoolam et Sir Abdul Razak Mohammed, que this would be fact in our civil law. It was brought in our civil law in 1981 after the death of Sir Abdul Razak Mohammed. But today, Honorable Kunjusa wants to take us back before, before the time of colonial days. This would not be correcting wrong. It would be bringing us to another epoch. So I am convinced, therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, when I listen to Honorable Minister Kunjusa, that her words are dangerous. Her words are devoid of any logic. And for a minister of the Republic to have said what she has said, it was an insult to our law as it stands today. And that is the danger. And I am of the humble view that the Prime Minister should call her to order. It is not a question about going to make certain extreme right movement happy, and then she's going to just try to hatch something that comes out, and I don't mean egg and omelette here, I just mean she hatched an idea. It's not the point. On ne peut pas perpétuellement être sur une boîte de savon. One has to know when one is going to open one's mouth what the law is and not speak nonsense. That is what the responsibility of a minister is. And the responsibility of a prime minister is very simple: to ensure that the continuity of the law. The law is that religious marriages are recognized, full stop. And all those widows, they have been disappearing, but you do know how many of them have not been paid les arriérages de pension? And you are saying as a government that you're going to come and correct a wrong committed by the MSM itself, but this government today has a minister that wants to take us to the time pre-independence. Courage aux backbenchers qui ont eu le toupet au moins et l'intelligence de se prononcer contre ce qu'elle a dit. Mais ce qui est grave, c'est que this government refuses to recognize that all those widows and their children that have grown up without being paid their due. There's arriérage that is due to them. If I'm to listen to the Honorable Minister Kunjusa, those women are not equal, don't have equal rights. Those women are not to be recognized. And let me finish on the speech that was given in South Africa by Mahatma Gandhi when he was a young lawyer fighting against British colonialism. At a time when the British colonialists refused to recognize Hindu religious marriages, Muslim religious marriages, he stood up in a gathering and said, our women and our sisters cannot be considered as concubines. We married them religiously, and they are to be recognized as our wives. More respect is due to our mothers and our sisters. And what the Honorable Minister Kunjusa has done, I hope she's brought to order, and it is nothing else and nothing less than her resignation that would be something that has been offered, and she has to leave as minister. Thank you very much.
I'll suspend the sitting for 30 minutes.